Hello everyone, I'm Maeve. When I was 13, for the first time, someone whom I could trust came into my life. Before that, interacting with people only brought me pain and disappointment. I thought it would be different with him, but he broke my heart more than anyone. I was taken to a children's home when I was 4. I don't remember my mother well. She had beautiful blonde hair and bruises on her arms. She called me her princess. And she also had a pungent smell, the same smell my dad had. They fought all the time. I would hear blows, then Mom would cry. She also cried when they took me away. I was sure that she would come back for me, but that didn't happen. A foster family was found for me. Those were the worst 4 years of my life. I was forced to work just to not end up on the street. The older I got, the harder my responsibilities were. Only when a social worker caught me chopping firewood in the backyard did the nightmare end. After that, I was assigned to another family. My new guardians were good people. I learned what care was, and I went to school like a normal kid. But after 2 years, I ran away. They didn't do anything wrong to me, but I just couldn't trust them. I was always waiting to be tricked. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere in the world. I ran away again and again. The last time it happened, I went from my bed right out in my pajamas. I was 13. And then I met him. I had been wandering along the street for a long time before I wandered into a park. A man was sitting on a bench under a tree. When I was walking by, he suddenly said, "A little chilly for a stroll in your pajamas." He scared me. I felt like he had bad intentions, so I walked faster. But then his voice softened. "I have warm tea and an extra sweater, but I see that you have somewhere to be." I stopped and looked at him. We both knew that I had nowhere to go. He smiled sadly, and I decided to trust him. We got into a conversation. For the first time, someone was interested in listening to me. I told him my story, and I didn't want to go back to the orphanage. Suddenly, he asked what I dreamt of doing. It was so stupid, but I told him. I had dreamed of becoming an actress. I knew it would never happen, but he told me that I would succeed. I thought he was joking, but he looked into my eyes and promised that he would help. All that was required of me was to return to go back to the orphanage, behave myself, and wait a little while until he picked me up. I believed him. I returned to the orphanage and waited. Day after day, month after month, I started to think that he had just tricked me into going back. I was so upset, but then a social worker said that there was a family ready to take me. I was shattered. Would I really have to go through that nightmare again? Why on earth did I listen to him? Now I would have to run away again. I was told that my new guardian was waiting for me in the car. I came closer and saw that it was him, the same person who had promised to fulfill my dreams. He had come back for me. I burst into tears of joy. He told me his name was Gary. He immediately established 3 rules. Don't run away, don't argue when he asks me to do something, and never ask about his work. That was all he asked for. In return, he promised to fulfill all my dreams. At first, our life wasn't easy. After all, Gary was used to living alone. It turned out that he had also been an orphan, so when it came to me, he didn't know how to take care of someone. And I did not know how to trust anyone. It was hard for us to get used to each other. I thought he had recently moved because there was almost no furniture in the house, but Gary said that he had been living here for 6 years. Strange, but he had been prepared for my arrival. My room was the most comfortable. Gary had even hung a cute poster over my bed. Gary wasn't on social media. He just didn't exist on the internet at all. Also, I couldn't find a single photograph of him in the whole house, but there were other decorations on the walls. When Gary went away on a business trip for a couple of days, I wandered down to the basement and found a mini shooting gallery. What kind of work was he doing anyway? Night shifts and business trips? But I wasn't allowed to ask about it. Gradually, I began to get used to my new life, and to Gary. Something was stopping me from calling him father. One time, I even cooked dinner for him. It was the first meal I had ever made. I wanted to please him. But he ran into the kitchen and said that he urgently needed to work. I was so upset. I had worked so hard. When he saw how upset I was, he decided to try the food. Because he had stopped to eat, he was late and quickly ran into the basement. He always did, but this time, I heard a strange noise. When he finally left, I decided to check. I noticed a small door in the wall that he had left open while rushing around. I decided to look inside. There was a huge box. I opened it. What I had found scared me so much that I ran away. I wandered all night, wondering what to do. Could I trust him again? Maybe I was being dramatic and he could explain everything. I decided to give Gary a second chance and went back. When I came in, he told me coldly that I had broken a rule. I said that it was a mistake and I wouldn't run away again. Gary sighed heavily, and he let it go. I realized that this was my home. I loved Gary. I didn't want to lose this. We spent 4 more years together. I thought it would always be that way, but everything changed in a single day. One day, Gary returned from work very distraught. His face was scraped up and it hurt him to move. He told me that we were leaving and that I had to pack up my essentials quickly. I was terribly scared, but did as he asked. For about half a year, we traveled around the country without staying in one place for too long. Gary explained that he was having problems with some business partners, but he would take care of it. He registered some new documents and we officially became dad and daughter. He also made me memorize some coordinates. I didn't know what that place was, but he told me that he would explain when the time was right. Finally, we settled in a small house in the North Dakota forest near Fargo. We lived there for almost a month. I thought our life would get back to normal, but instead, everything came to an end. In the morning, we were awakened by the sound of cars and flashing lights. A policeman shouted that we were surrounded. Gary instantly jumped up and ran to the door. He checked if the door was closed and told me to hide. He was about to pull something from his bag, but then he decided to give up. He opened the door and took a few steps back. He put his hands behind his head. The last thing he said to me was, "Do you remember the coordinates? Find the treasure when they're not following you. It's for your future. I promised you." Gary forbade me from coming to his trial. He was sentenced to 30 years. I don't even know why. I wrote letters to him, but he never replied. I tried to set up visitations, but he didn't want to see me. It was the worst year of my life. I had lost my family again. After another year, everyone had forgotten about me. Then I remembered the coordinates. I found that spot and started digging. I found the same box that had been at home, but this time there was just money in it. It was enough to live a full life and realize all my dreams, but I didn't know how or where to store the money. There was also a note. Gary asked me to go after my dreams no matter what. So I decided to move to California, but I needed to see my father for the last time. I applied for visitation over and over, and one day, he finally accepted. Gary had aged a lot during his time in prison. I was so glad to see him, but he told me that it would be our last meeting. I didn't understand why he was being so cruel to me. I demanded an explanation, and he told me everything. Gary was a person who gets rid of people for money. He had done many terrible things, but he only wanted me to remember his good side, so that I would remember him as a father, and to be sure to achieve what I wanted in life. I was a killer. Then he asked for forgiveness and left. I was so upset. I started screaming and begging him to come back, but he didn't even turn around. 2 months have passed since our last meeting. I still can't find a place for myself. Yes, I know that Gary was involved in something illegal, but I didn't think that it was something so serious. I still didn't believe that's what he was doing. He was still my father, and I loved him against all odds. I wrote him a letter so that he would know that I had forgiven him and I would wait. But I still can't bring myself to send it. Do you think I should do it? Or just throw the note away? Thank you for listening to my story.